Hola, hola, muy buenas tardes a todos ustedes. Es un honor contar con su presencia en esta gran reunión. Juntos celebramos toda nuestra comunidad de egresados, reuniéndonos el día de hoy con líderes internacionales, reencontrándonos de manera digital con nuestros compañeros y participando en retos y experiencias extraordinarias. Estamos muy contentos de tenerlos el día de hoy. Bienvenidos a los que se incorporan por primera vez a este bloque de EGADE, EXATEC Fest 2021, y también bienvenidos a los que vienen de la transmisión del EXATEC Fest Nacional. Para que disfruten la sesión, les pedimos de favor que apaguen su micrófono, pero prendan su cámara, los queremos ver. Y también les recomendamos que seleccionen el Speaker View en la parte superior de su Zoom para que puedan ver y disfrutar mejor de esta sesión. Cualquier duda o comentario o saludo también se vale. Lo pueden poner en el chat, estaremos ahí al pendiente de sus comentarios en el chat, el cual ya se encuentra habilitado. También en esta celebración los invitamos a compartir en sus redes sociales parte de la experiencia de este evento. Algunos por ella compartieron su unboxing de los chilaquiles, pero también pueden compartir alguna fotografía, algún video o algo de lo que vivan el día de hoy o algún amigo con el que se reencuentren. Y bueno, no olviden etiquetarnos y mencionar el hashtag #OrgulloEGADE. Nuevamente, bienvenidos. Mi nombre es María Livas, directora de Relación con Alumnos y Egresados de EGADE Business School, y es un gusto para mí acompañarlos durante esta celebración. Nuevamente, pónganse cómodos y disfrutemos juntos de este EXATEC Fest de EGADE Business School. Para darles la más cordial bienvenida el día de hoy y arrancar oficialmente el evento que tenemos preparado para ustedes, le doy la bienvenida al doctor Osmar Zabaleta, decano interino de EGADE Business School, para que les comparta un mensaje de bienvenida. Doctor Osmar, ¿qué tal? Bienvenido.
Muchas gracias, María. Buenas noches. Qué gusto estar aquí. Gracias por la oportunidad. Estimadas egresadas y egresados de EGADE Business School, es un gusto saludarles. Deseo primero que todo que ustedes y sus seres queridos se encuentren con salud y bienestar. Pero muchas gracias por estar aquí. Espero que hayan disfrutado mucho la transmisión nacional de este importante evento. Ahora, es un honor y un privilegio para mí tener la oportunidad de darles la más cordial bienvenida al EXATEC Fest EGADE Business School, la segunda parte de la celebración. Este es un espacio de reencuentro, conexión y socialización entre nuestros egresados y egresadas y con la comunidad de nuestra escuela. Quiero aprovechar la oportunidad para expresar mi más sincero agradecimiento a María Livas como líder del equipo, a Mariana Garza, a Gia Rodríguez, a Cecilia Terán y al equipo extendido por hacer posible este evento. Sabemos que estamos inmersos en un entorno de muchos retos, caracterizado por la volatilidad, incertidumbre, complejidad y ambigüedad. La pandemia por COVID-19 ha subrayado la necesidad que tenemos como líderes de adaptarnos a eventos inesperados y de demostrar resiliencia, agilidad de respuesta e innovación, y de ejercer nuestro liderazgo con responsabilidad, solidaridad y empatía. Es por esto por lo que quiero expresar nuestro más sincero agradecimiento a Raf Harfush, estratega, antropóloga digital y autora de bestsellers del New York Times, quien impartirá una conferencia de mucha relevancia y pertinencia en virtud del contexto que acabo de describir. Mi agradecimiento es también al Master Chef Iván Torrejón, quien nos guiará en la preparación de los tradicionales chilaquiles TEC. En virtud del foro en el que estamos, es de suma importancia mencionar que parte del posicionamiento y reconocimiento que tiene EGADE Business School se debe, sin duda alguna, a su comunidad de egresadas y egresados. Ustedes son parte de nuestra inspiración y nos motivan a mejorar continuamente. Y es debido a esto que tratamos de innovar de manera constante sobre las formas de potenciar nuestra relación con ustedes e identificar las formas en las que podemos, desde EGADE, generarles más valor en lo profesional y en lo personal. Hace un par de semanas, nuestra escuela reafirmó su liderazgo con sus maestrías posicionadas como número 1 en México y América Latina, dentro de los QS Global MBA and Business Masters Rankings 2022, destacando el indicador de emprendimiento y trayectoria de los egresados en la región y en el mundo. Destacó también a nuestros egresados en el indicador de empleabilidad, situándose dentro de los primeros 25 a nivel global. Además, como nuestro presidente y rector ejecutivo, David Garza, nos comentó hace un momento, en esta semana el Tecnológico de Monterrey escaló 14 posiciones para llegar al lugar número 26 del mundo en empleabilidad de sus egresados, según el ranking de The Graduate Employability 2022 del mismo prestigioso evaluador Global QS. Este ranking se construye a partir de los egresados de profesional y de posgrado más buscados por los empleadores de las mejores universidades del mundo. Estos resultados, por supuesto, nos llenan de orgullo, ya que en gran medida son el resultado del impacto de ustedes, nuestra extraordinaria comunidad EXATEC EGADE, y de sus logros como líderes empresariales y emprendedores. Muchas, pero muchas felicidades. Iniciamos, pues, esta nueva edición del EXATEC Fest EGADE Business School con el compromiso de continuar brindando espacios de conexión, así como vivencias enriquecedoras y de valor para ustedes. Nuevamente les expreso en nombre de la comunidad de EGADE Business School y en el mío propio, nuestro más sincero agradecimiento por atender esta invitación. Quiero aprovechar la oportunidad que tengo de estar con ustedes para pedirles que continuemos fortaleciendo nuestra relación y que a través de los diferentes eventos y actividades que María Livas y su equipo han planeado, ustedes sigan creciendo como personas y como profesionales, y al mismo tiempo espero que estas actividades sean espacios para convivir con sus excompañeros y excompañeras de clase, así como con los miembros de la comunidad de nuestra facultad. También les quiero pedir que si ustedes, como egresados y egresadas de nuestra escuela, encontraron un valor significativo en el programa que estudiaron en EGADE, se conviertan en embajadores de nuestra propuesta de valor. Sean bienvenidas y bienvenidos. Muchas gracias por estar aquí. Muchas gracias, María, por la oportunidad.
Encantada, doctor. Muchísimas gracias a usted por acompañarnos y bueno, por esta gran invitación también a nuestros egresados de seguir colaborando y creando lazos con EGADE, con nuestra escuela, ¿verdad? Y bueno, para continuar con la celebración, vamos a tener una pequeña dinámica antes de entrar al otro contenido que tenemos preparado para ustedes, porque queremos ver de qué programas son, de qué año se graduaron, en dónde están. Entonces, bueno, con estas breves preguntas nos vamos a ayudar a conocer un poquito más quiénes estamos el día de hoy aquí conectados disfrutando de este EXATEC Fest. Entonces, les pido que ya no la sabemos, por favor, para participar, ingresen a Menti en su explorador, menti.com o Mentimeter, y van a agregar el código 327144 que aparece en su pantalla. Les voy a dar un par de minutitos, lo pueden hacer con su celular, lo pueden hacer en la computadora en otra ventana, pero bueno, es una dinámica muy breve, con premios también al final, para poder conocernos y ver en dónde y quiénes estamos el día de hoy conectados. Muy bien, 327144, ya somos súper rápidos, entonces vamos a empezar. ¿De qué programa eres? Ya empezaste. Hay muchos MBAs, Full-Time MBA, EAE, MAF, mira, MIB, Executive MBA, MBM, GBS, MA. Qué padre ver egresados desde las primeras generaciones de la escuela aquí conectados el día de hoy. A ver, ¿qué más? Creciendo, MBA 2020, bueno, MBA. Hace mucho que no veíamos a un MIB, por ahí, One MBA también, siempre representados. De la especialidad, muy bien. En la siguiente pregunta, ¿de qué sede te graduaste de EGADE? Queremos ver aquí si estamos de todas las sedes representados. ¿Te graduaste de Monterrey, de Santa Fe, Guadalajara, de Querétaro? Qué padre, también tenemos de CCM, de Ciudad de México. No, pues muy contentos de ver que hay egresados, ahora sí, de todas las sedes de EGADE Business School el día de hoy conectados. Y por último, ¿en qué año te graduaste? El año pasado, el último egresado que se conectó era de 79. Vamos a ver si hoy le ganamos. A ver, 1987, mira, pues por ahí va, del 97, 2020, muchos del 2020, qué padre, los nuevos recién graduados, verlos por aquí, nos encanta verlos, 2017, 2014, del 96, del 91, del 2004, 2021, muy bien. Bueno, vamos a empezar, y la última ya nada más, para ver qué tan rápido identifican, es un mini I Spy. En la siguiente pantalla van a aparecer iconos representativos de EGADE, del TEC, diferentes logotipos. Van a tener como 20 segundos para poder tomar una foto o un screenshot o una imagen de pantalla para identificar 2 de los 3 borregos teus que tienen cubrebocas. Y los primeros 3 que nos envíen al correo dulce.ramirez@tec.mx el screenshot marcado los borregos, se van a ganar unos premios del Tech Store. Entonces vamos a ver por ahí quiénes son los más rápidos. Listo, esa es la imagen. Va a estar 20 segundos en pantalla. Les recomendamos que les manden screenshot y ya les dije, tienen que identificar 2 de los 3 borregos teus que tienen cubrebocas. Listo, ya se va la imagen. Bueno, pues espero que hayan sido muy rápidos y que no se distraigan. Les recordamos que las tienen que mandar a dulce.ramirez@tec.mx y los primeros 2 que lo envíen van a ganarse unos premios, unos gift cards en la Tech Store. Bueno, esto es lo que tenemos preparado para ustedes. La verdad nos encanta ver que se conectan egresados de todas nuestras sedes, que se conectan egresados que se acaban de graduar, están por graduarse o que se graduaron ya hace muchos años y bueno, queremos seguir fomentando este tipo de eventos y creando comunidad, ¿verdad? Ser embajadores de nuestra escuela. Y bueno, a continuación tendremos nuestra conferencia magistral que tenemos preparada el día de hoy para ustedes, How to Lead and Thrive in Times of Disruptive Change. Nuestra conferencista invitada el día de hoy, Rahaf Harouf, nos compartirá una charla muy interesante que nos invita a reflexionar y actuar en tiempos de cambio. Me voy a permitir presentarles un poco a Rahaf. Ella es estratega, antropóloga digital y autora de bestsellers centrados en las interacciones que emergen entre las tecnologías emergentes, la innovación y la cultura digital. Su investigación se centra en los impactos humanos de la inteligencia artificial, los algoritmos, las redes sociales y el Big Data. Ella es directora ejecutiva del Instituto Red Thread de Cultura Digital y enseña innovación y modelos de negocios emergentes en la Escuela de Administración de Ciencias Políticas en París. Rahaf también es miembro del Consejo Nacional Digital de Francia y en el 2021 se incorporó a Oxford Internet Institute como profesora visitante en el área de política. En el 2019, la prestigiosa organización de los Napoleones la nombraron como una de las mujeres más innovadoras de Francia. En el 2017, el Hay Literary Festival la incluyó como una de las principales pensadoras del futuro para dar forma al mundo. Rahaf fue nombrada Young Global Changer por la Cumbre Global Think Tank del G20. También ha sido reconocida por el Foro Económico Mundial como Joven Modeladora Global y por el Foro de Mujeres para la Economía y la Sociedad, como talento en crecimiento por su liderazgo intelectual en los campos de cultura y tecnología digitales. En su tiempo libre, que no sé a qué hora deberá de ser, pero sí en su tiempo libre, Rahaf disfruta tomarle fotos a su perro Pixel en Instagram, está aprendiendo a tocar el ukelele y trabaja en escribir su primera novela. Bueno, los dejo con ella. Rahaf, bienvenida, welcome. It's so nice having you here.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing this day with me. I'm so excited to be here with all of you. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about my research, which is in digital anthropology. And I'm going to be looking over here sometimes because I would love to hear what you have to say in the chat. So if you guys are here and if you're with me and if you're ready, let me know in the chat. Just type in hola or hello or something so I know that I'm not by myself here in the office. I'm going to be asking you guys a bunch of questions. Oh, so lovely. Thank you so much, Michelle, Gabriella. Thank you. It's always so good to know that there are people out there, which is one of the changes that we've had to get used to during these very strange times. So as a digital anthropologist, my job is to study technology and culture. And that means that oftentimes I look at what's happening in media and entertainment to try to understand how markets are changing and how new business models are emerging. So, for example, how many of you, I'm sure many of you know who these fantastic seven are. If you know who they are and if you are a fan, please let me know your favorite member. This is obviously the Korean band BTS. Yes, a lot of people know. We've got people that are fans of V. Karen likes V. People know who they are. That makes me very happy. Sometimes I go into audiences and they don't know who they are at all, and it makes me very sad. So you've got some fans for J-Hope and V. So for those of you that don't know, this is a boy band called BTS. They're from South Korea. They are the biggest boy band in the entire world right now. And during the pandemic last year, when people were in confinement, they had to cancel their tour. And so they said they were going to create a virtual and digital experience for their fans. A lot of people said, this isn't going to work. Nobody's going to want to do it. No one's going to want to participate in it. But they ended up putting on an amazing show. So they ended up putting a live virtual pay-per-view concert. People said that no one would pay. A lot of people paid. They had over 756,000 concurrent viewers, so people that were watching at the same time live from over 107 different regions. And in that one night, they were able to make over $20 million USD in terms of virtual concert offerings. So as you can see, I look at how technology is being used to create new opportunities for how we experience entertainment and music and how we gather. Another really interesting example that I came across was a virtual concert that was done in Fortnite with a rapper named Travis Knight. On Fortnite, a rapper named Travis Scott. They had over 12 million Fortnite players that participated in this virtual conference. And the gaming company, Epic Games, that owns Fortnite, is estimated to be earning over $5 billion of projected revenue by the end of this year. So again, technology is really changing the way that we interact, that we gather, that we have relationships, that we have fun. And the reason why I'm talking to you about BTS and Fortnite and concerts is because often when we're in organizations, I work with a lot of leaders and a lot of organizations, we tend to focus on what I call tool-centric discussions, right? We focus on the tool itself, on the new benefits, the new features, how it's going to be implemented within the organization strategy. But, tool-centric conversations are quite normal, right? Because artificial intelligence, for example. Artificial intelligence is set to transform every single aspect of business, right? I mean, it's estimated that in the next 10 years, it's going to add $70 billion to the global GDP, which is a lot. So obviously, everybody wants to take advantage of all of these opportunities. And I have to tell you guys, there are a lot of opportunities. This slide right here is just some of the enterprise offerings, some of the AI and technology services that you can use in your organization. So as you can see, we need to wrap our heads around a lot of these new technologies. If you want a different way of looking at the slide, here's one from a strategic level for you MBAs and you business graduates out there, which is basically artificial intelligence technology is changing every single aspect of the business. So it's becoming this invisible layer that's like underneath everything. So from HR to marketing to security to operations to payment procurement to learning and development, to every really single part of the business is being touched by IT. And so it makes sense that we're all in this rush to try to understand these tools. And so when we talk about technology, we tend to talk about the tool itself. However, these are really only surface level innovations, right? Because every single day we hear that there's some new tool or some new platform that's going to change the way that we live and we work. And so it's very easy to see some of these surface level changes because they're easy, right? You see processes change or workflows change or pipelining change, but technology is weaving itself into the fabric of our lives. It's acting in ways that we don't always see. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, because I believe that technology reveals truths about who we are, about what we want, about what we think, about what we value. And we need to be thinking about these deeper meanings, these deeper impacts and influences, and what this means for the world that we are collectively co-creating. I mean, if you think about it, during the pandemic, technology has already changed the way that we grieve. For example, we were introduced to Zoom funerals, something that was awful, but that became and has become quite normal. But death is another area that I'm very interested in when it comes to technology, because technology is changing the conversation about what happens to the pieces of yourself after you pass on. So I'd like to show you an example of some technology that is being pioneered in South Korea. So take a look at this, and I'd love to hear in the chat what you think as you are watching this. So I want you to think about that for a second. This was a service, it's an early prototype of a South Korean company that took pictures, voice samples, and some videos of this woman's daughter who had passed away because of an illness, and generated a digital copy for her in order for her to be able to interact with her in a virtual reality space. What do we think about this? I'm seeing people that says torture, unnecessary, tough, cruel. You know, I think so too. I'm very torn about this. On one hand, it would be great to have a way to interact with people. On the other, it just sounds really intense. But these are the types of conversations that we're going to need to start having in terms of how much we want to let technology into certain parts of our lives. And death is a really, really big piece. I know a lot of people, Jose says it's a thin line between great ideas and bad ones. Marie says right now it's very unrealistic and cruel. So emotions are quite divided. Some people think it's a great idea. Some people think it's a horrible idea. So the point is that this technology is forcing us to think about questions like what happens to us when we pass. And this is really the theme of what I want to talk to you, what we're going to talk about today, which is, leaders and CEOs, Sundar Pichai, who is the CEO of Google and Alphabet, he says that we are now living in the era of artificial intelligence. And I think he's right, but I think he's only half right. I actually believe, based on my work, that we are living in an era of humanness, and that technology is going to force us to redefine what it means to be human. It's going to force us to set boundaries, have difficult conversations, and really try to figure out what role should these tools play in our day-to-day lives, in our professional and our personal lives. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go over sort of 5 themes that I have noticed in my work over the last several years that I think are helpful in framing some of the context of just making sense of everything that we're seeing. As I mentioned earlier, if we get too focused on each individual tool, we miss the bigger themes, the bigger ideas, the bigger shifts that are happening in society. So the first theme that I want to talk about is data abundance. And it is this idea that we're moving from a world where data was scarce and expensive to one where we're surrounded by data. It's plentiful, it's cheap, it's all around us. So I'm going to turn to my friends in the chat and I'm going to ask you guys, all of you, so how many of you in the last hour used your mobile phone for something, sent an email, a text message, a social network, a game, a photo? How many people looked up something on the internet or looked up directions? So we have a lot of people. Yes, Alejandro says the activity of the Zoom, all of these, many people are commenting. All of these pieces are part of our contributions to this data ecosystem. And this is what makes the current information ecosystem that we live in so interesting, is that we are all participating in contributing information. And to give you an idea of how much we all produce, this is a slide. This shows statistically how much information is created. This is from 2020, but how much information is created every minute of the day. So every single minute, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, every single minute, there's over 347,000 pictures that are uploaded on Instagram. Over 500 hours of YouTube videos are uploaded. More than 69,000 people apply for jobs on LinkedIn. More than Amazon ships more than 6,600 packages get shipped every single minute of the day. And so this shows you just how much data we are creating. Now, the problem with this data is that with this data abundance is that we have all become quite overwhelmed. It has become the norm to drown in it. How many people feel overwhelmed by all the information that they have to consume on a regular basis? Emails and text messages and notifications and social media posts and blog posts and articles and podcasts and audiobooks and newspaper articles, like a lot of people. And you're not alone. This has just kind of become a regular way that we navigate through life. But what's happening is that we also are now living in an era where there's infinite scrolling, right? It never ends. We feel overwhelmed because there's no end point, because we scroll and we scroll and we scroll and we never get to the end. And what's happening is that as we're trying to navigate, many of us have decided that we're going to use things like notifications in order to stay on top of everything. Now, what we're starting to see now from a neuroscience perspective is that notifications are having an impact on our brains. So when your phone, when it dings or pings or makes a noise or vibrates, your brain actually releases dopamine, which is a pleasure hormone. It feels good. You get a jolt of stimulation and it's a little exciting. It's like a little pill that you take that just perks you up. Now, what's been really interesting is that we are becoming quite addicted to these little jolts of microstimulation. And researchers did this really funny experiment where they put people in a room, they took away their devices, and in the room was a table, a chair, and this machine that if you touched it would generate an electric charge. And what they found out was that people would rather electrocute themselves than be bored for 15 to 20 minutes. So they would touch the machine and go, jolt, because that was more preferable than just like sitting and not doing anything without their phones or devices for a few minutes a day. And so, yes, people are saying it's WhatsApp and on the web has become one of the most used tools. Yes, absolutely. So we're using all of these tools all the time, and we're getting dopamine hits and we're getting constant stimulation. What this also means, especially when it comes to knowledge workers, when it comes to people who work in strategy or design or accounting or finance or marketing or leadership or management or consulting or research, really all of us working in today's knowledge economy, is that we live in an era of constant distractions. We're always getting interrupted. And according to new research, we tap, swipe, or click on our phones over 2,617 times per day. Now, think of what happens to your brain if every single time you click or tap or swipe, your brain gets a little jolt of dopamine. You start to seek it out. You start to look at your phone more. It becomes this self-perpetuating cycle where your phone dings, you get the pleasure hormone, it feels good. So you look at your phone, you wait for it to ding, you know what I mean? Like you kind of keep going in this cycle. And this is really problematic because innovation and creativity requires space and time. Now, innovation is something that people are very obsessed with in today's business culture. Everyone wants to have an innovative workforce, a strategic workforce. They want to have creative workforce. But the reality is you can't be strategic and you can't be innovative and you can't be creative if you're constantly getting interrupted and distracted at work every single day. There is a research that came out a couple of years ago that says the cost of being distracted was costing the American economy $588 billion each year, because every single time you get interrupted, it takes you between 20 to 25 minutes to get back onto the task that you were originally working on. So this is really interesting. It's this idea that we live in a world where it's very normal to get constant stimulation, to get constant content. But what we actually need for our brains to be creative is space and time. And think about this for a second. You know, I'm going to look at the chat window for a second. When was the last time that you didn't have anything to do or that you were bored? And please don't say right now. But for most of us, we're never bored anymore. We always have, Netflix or podcasts or audiobooks or social media or things like that. And we never give our brains the chance to just be quiet and to think and to absorb and to learn. And scientists are now showing that daydreaming, when you let your mind wander, is an essential part of your emotional and mental development. And it's really important for your well-being. When you daydream, it gives your unconscious brain the opportunity to think of solutions to some of the ideas that you were facing. So I want to ask you in the chat, when do you get your best ideas? Is it when you're walking? Is it when you're working out? Is it when you're commuting? Is it when you're in the shower, when you're gardening? When do you get your best ideas? When do you feel you're most inspired? So people say at 5 a.m., when driving, in the shower. And a shower is a very common place to get good ideas, by the way. When people take baths, running, in the morning while they're walking, when they're working out. So if you notice, nobody yet, unless there's a rare person in here, has said, oh, I get my best ideas when I'm sitting at my computer answering 500 emails a day. So this is the type of change that we need to think about in terms of how technology is fitting into our lives, right? Because on one hand, we want to be creative, we want to be inspired, we want to be innovative, but on the other, technology is actually impacting our ability to stop and think. And this is a real problem because many of these tools prioritize urgency and addiction. So whoever mentioned WhatsApp in the chat earlier, WhatsApp is a really good example, because if when you send somebody a message on WhatsApp, you see one blue check mark means your message has been delivered, and 2 blue check marks means the person has read your message. So with features like that, it puts a lot of social pressure on people to always be responsive, because it's become like a digital etiquette. It's rude to keep people waiting. It's rude not to respond right away. So what you have is technology shaping how we interact with each other socially, because if I don't get back to you right away and you know that I've read your message, you're going to be mad at me. So this is part of the thing that managers and leaders like yourselves have to think about, which is some of the most innovative tools can actually get in the way of innovation. And this is especially true during the pandemic, when we put in place all sorts of new technologies to stay connected, to work remotely, to meet remotely, to collaborate. We just have to be sure that the way that we're implementing these tools is helping people focus on their work and isn't just constantly interrupting them. So the one question that I want you to ask yourselves on a regular basis is, do your technological tools, do they support you, or are they distracting you from deep focus, deep work, from the other things that you're supposed to be working on in order for you to produce the best possible product or service, or whatever it is that you're currently working on? So are your tools supporting you, or are they distracting you? Some people are saying they distract me most of the time. Some people say it's 50-50, but it's important to start looking, and for the tools that distract you, how can you use them in a better way so that you can carve out some of that quiet, innovative thinking time for yourself. Now, the second theme is called digital relativism, and it's how we each are building a world in our own image. So because all of us are data producers, what happens is that companies now can custom tailor products and services to exactly what we want, our preferences to a T. And this is something that I find like really fascinating. So for example, if you are on Netflix's algorithm not only suggests what you should watch and recommends shows for you to watch, they also have an algorithm that understands what images, what little pictures, that the thumbnails for the movies will be the most attractive to you. So in this example on the slides, what you can see is that two different people will see advertisements for the movie, or will see the movie Good Will Hunting come up on their timeline. But if the first person on the top row, if they have seen romantic comedies like Serendipity and Eternal Sunshine and While You Were Sleeping, they will see an image of the movie that focuses on the relationships between two of the characters of Good Will Hunting. And if the person watches more comedies like Arrested Development and Zoolander and Anger Management, they will see an ad for the movie that features comedic, brilliant actor Robin Williams. So even the way that we engage, our preferences are being custom tailored to what we like and what we expect. Now we're seeing this in onboarding. We're seeing this now entering organizations where there are custom onboarding platforms where people can get training in a way that is designed specifically for their brains. They can get help and access to resources in the format and length and method that best suits their brain, which is a really great opportunity for companies to deliver custom-made training. We're also seeing the rise of hyper personalization and hyper customization. So for example, this is a company called Pros. They allow you to use, you fill out a form and you fill out all this information about yourself, and it creates skincare and hair care that is specifically formulated for you. It is made for your specific hair type and your specific needs. And by doing this, they have increased their customer base by 5 times since the company launched a couple of years ago. And so this is something to consider, that we're moving towards a marketplace where most consumers will expect products that are made just for them. And it's not just the products and services, it's also media. We're also gaining the abilities to insert ourselves into the stories that we like to see and that we like to participate. This is an app called Zao. I'm going to show you a little audio clip of how you use it. And the way that Zao works is you can download it on the App Store. And then what you do is you pick a scene from a television show or a movie, and the app allows you instantly to put your face on the character's face. So let's take a look. This is an example from Game of Thrones. So this is the original character that you can see on here. And we're gonna press play, and you're gonna see the user of the app put their own face on.
You can call me Sam, if you want. My mother calls me Sam.
It's not gonna get any easier, you know. You're gonna have to defend yourself.
Why didn't you get up and fight?
I'm a coward. My father always says so.
The war's no place for cowards.
Well, you're right, I'm sorry. I just wanted to thank you.
So not only can we order shampoo that's made for us, coffee that's made for us, and custom clothes that's made for us, we are entering into an ability to have our favorite shows be reflections of what we want, to put our faces on the faces of characters. And as we all know, we've been following the development of this technology. It's creating some pretty interesting ethical dilemmas. These are two pictures. One of them is real and one of them is fake. One of them is a deep fake generated by AI of Vladimir Putin, and the other one is real footage. Does anyone want to guess if it's the right or the left, which one's real and which one's fake? Who wants to guess? Who thinks if you're looking at your screen, who thinks the one on the left is the real one? Who thinks the one on the right is the real one? So I'm seeing a lot of left, right, left, no differences, left. No, there actually are differences. And it's funny because we have a lot of trouble telling them apart. So the one on the left is real and the one on the right is fake. And the one on the right was generated with open source technology that only needed less than 2 minutes worth of video footage of the original subject in order to be able to generate this image. So as you can see, this is becoming a little bit more of a problematic concern when it comes to saying and showing things that world leaders or politicians or CEOs can say without necessarily being verified. What this means is that we are basically living in a filter bubble where the way that we see the world is reflected to us as we want it to be, not as it actually is. And I know we've seen people in our lives that really, whether they believe certain things about the vaccine or about politics or about whether or not the earth is round or flat. I mean, people really get into their little bubbles, and it makes it hard to engage because everyone is walled off in their own separate sections. Culturally, remember, I look at things culturally. What is happening is that we as a society have put so much value on personalized content that objective content is no longer as important or as prioritized based on everything that we use. Think of everything that you use that is personalized for you, right? Your Amazon queue, your Spotify list, your Netflix, your Google search results. If you use any app to access news, anything that learns from you, even your email, which learns from your behavior as to what's important and what's not important, social media. And so we are constantly saying with our actions as consumers that we value personalized content. So really, we're becoming reliant on a limited and biased number of inputs. And that means that we need to be very careful about what information we're using in order to make decisions inside of an organization. One of the best examples is Amazon. So Amazon, a couple of years ago, they had put in an AI algorithm in place in order to look for good candidates that they thought would be a good match to hire. So they told this algorithm, look at all the people that we've hired in the past, see the people who were like great candidates, people who were promoted quickly, people who are doing really well, and then find us other people outside of the companies that match so that we can have a better chance of hiring people that are a good fit. As many of you have heard the story before, what ended up happening is the AI looked at all the people inside the company that were successful. And because the majority of people in positions of power that the algorithm looked at happened to be male, they happened to be men, the algorithm said, okay, well, then I guess only men will make good candidates. And they excluded all women from the talent pipeline completely. And the people that built this algorithm didn't realize it until months and months later. So for months, this algorithm had, from a misunderstanding or what we call a misalignment of technology, what they decided to do was that it just kind of excluded women accidentally. And this accident can have severe economic ramifications for people on a personal level. If you are getting tossed out of the pile and you're not even being considered for jobs because of an AI, that is something that we have to talk about. So where we used to talk to people about having a balanced media diet, now we talk to them about having an algorithm diet. So I want you to ask yourself, how much of your information is coming to you from an algorithm, right? Because there is a cost of personalization. There is a cost to all of this, in which we are having a harder time interacting with opinions that we don't agree with. We're having a harder time facing conflicts and having uncomfortable conversations. And every time this happens, everyone retreats to their corner of the web. This is a slide of a tool called Replica. And Replica is an AI friend. One of the most interesting aspects of AI chatbots that I've been following is what's called companion chatbots, right? So these are chatbots that are your friend. And think about it this way. It says here, Replica is an AI friend that is always there for you. So what will it mean in the future to your real relationships if you have an AI that never argues with you, never fights with you, never disagrees with you? What is it going to do to your ability to, and your expectations with the real life, with the real other people in your life? And we're starting to see this now as kids are coming up, and as they start to use more and more of these tools, it is going to have an impact on how we view relationships in the future. So this is just something to keep in mind. So you want to ask yourself, how are you challenging your data assumptions, whether it's the content that you consume or the websites that you visit or the apps that you use? What are you doing to make sure that you are always looking for new perspectives and that you're challenging the assumptions that you're getting so that you're not in a bubble? How are you going to go outside of the bubble and make sure that you're reading a diverse range of information? Alejandro is recommending the documentary Her. Absolutely. If you haven't seen it, it's a great example of what happens when you build a relationship with an AI, as well as the, Enrique, my apologies. Enrique is recommending the movie Her. Alejandro recommended the movie The Social Dilemma, which also looks at all of these issues, which are great suggestions. Thank you for putting them in the chat. The third theme is digital DNA. And this is where it starts to get really interesting, because this is when you start to see how much of our society we're putting in tech. So I'm going to ask you a question. All right, is everybody ready? Here we go. Question. You are in a self-driving car, and the car is driving down the street, and a pedestrian crosses the street unexpectedly. The car has to choose somebody to save because it has to react in a split second. Who should the car save? Should it prioritize the safety of the person in the car, of the passenger, or should it prioritize the safety of the pedestrian? So let me know, who should the car save? I'm looking over here at these chat comments. So some people are saying pedestrians, most people are saying pedestrians and not the passenger, which is very interesting. So this changes from country to country. Now let me ask you this, would it change your opinion if the passenger in the car was a child, yes or no, and the pedestrian was an adult? Would that change your mind? Passenger in the car is a child, the pedestrian is so see, some people said yes, some people said no, some people said the car should save the pedestrian, the one that is the least safe, the car, so people are having these conversations. Now, here's the funny thing. Your results, what people answer, changes from country to country, from region to region. In some countries, people will prioritize children. In other societies, they'll prioritize the elderly. Some people will say, no, always the passenger. Some people will say, no, always the pedestrian. And my point here is that all the technology that we use, we have to teach that technology what's right and what's wrong. And it turns out that what's right and what's wrong is actually really complicated and really hard to simplify for tools that are being integrated in our society at such a high level. And this is really true for all of our technologies. I believe that technology is the manifestation of our belief systems. And that means that everything that we believe to be true, we're putting in our technology. So we have to be very careful that every single time you use a tool, whether it's Facebook or WhatsApp or even Zoom or different websites, you have to ask yourself, what do the people who built this technology, what did they believe? What do they think is true? What do they want the world to look like? And do we agree? Do I agree with this vision or not? Because if you do agree, what ends up happening is that when you use these websites, when you give them your attention, your data, your time, you're voting for that worldview. So the question I want you to ask yourself is, do your technologies align with your beliefs? And this is something that requires some thought as well. The fourth theme is the dissolution of boundaries. And this is where it gets really interesting, because this is where the rules of our world are kind of changing a little bit. So this is a prototype of a contact lens that is being developed by a big technology company. This is going to be an augmented reality contact lens. So eventually you're going to put it in your eye and it'll add a layer of technology, whether it's the weather or information or directions or whatever it is, it's coming. So these are images that are, they're living portraits. So the boundaries between art and technology is changing, between man and machine is changing. They're using AI to animate different art, different portraits and different historical figures, which I think is so strange to see. We're also seeing the emergence of new markets and online versus offline. So Fortnite has created these gear, so virtual running shoes, virtual clothes, virtual outfits. And this digital gaming goods is a $50 billion market. So people are paying a lot of money to wear virtual or digital copies of sneakers or of a hat or of a sweatshirt as they move around and play these games. And in the other direction, we're also seeing the impact of digital characters has on fashion. This is a character from Final Fantasy. And this Final Fantasy character was the star of a fashion ad for Louis Vuitton. So this is just, again, an interesting mesh of pop culture, technology, gaming, emerging markets, and luxury all together. So basically, everything is changing. And we need to ask ourselves, how are you integrating exploration and experimentation into your culture? How are you actually going and making time to go and see what's out there? Are you putting time on your calendar to go and try new social networks, or to try new technologies, or to play new games, or to understand how some of these tools are being used? Because many people are so busy with their day-to-day lives that they're not doing that at all. In order to do this, often within an organization, it requires a philosophical shift where we have to reward people and prioritize learning instead of just saying, oh, figure it out on your own time. We have to create cultures where people are actually rewarded for learning. It's included in their performance reviews, it's included in their bonuses, and it's something that really is a part of what the leadership considers important. And so if you manage people, if you manage teams, it's really important for them to see you as prioritizing learning. I mean, Bill Gates, and I know we can't all be like Bill Gates, but Bill Gates takes what he calls his thinking weeks. And what he does is, like, once a year, he takes 1 week, he leaves the office and he'll read like a whole bunch of books. He'll experiment with new technologies. He'll read books. He'll catch up on his articles and research. And he has said that if he has to do this in order to stay on top of all the new innovations that are happening, and he can't do it when he's at the office, so he carves out some time. And maybe you can't take out some time. Maybe you can only take out an afternoon, maybe not a week. Maybe it's an afternoon, maybe it's an hour, whatever it is, make sure you're putting that time in your calendar. And finally, I want to talk about being a human-centric leader and where do we go from here with all of these changes. What I know is that disruption is only the beginning. It was the pandemic now. Once things go back to some new normal, it will be another thing and another thing and another thing that ends up, changing the way that we live and work. So instead of being so focused on digital transformation, I think we need to completely change our mindset and move away from the idea of digital transformation to the idea of digital evolution. And digital evolution is a mindset where you understand that where transformation is a one-time change, like, oh, okay, we implemented this technology, now we've digitally transformed. You understand that evolution is ongoing and constant. You know that there's always going to be a change. The markets are going to change, your consumers are going to change, the technology is going to change, the regulations are going to change, politics are going to change, the world is going to change. And you know that this is just a part of living in a hyper-connected world. So when these changes happen, you're not upset, you're not surprised, you're not scared. You just say to yourself, okay, this is now an opportunity for me to evolve in a new direction. This is an opportunity for me to try something new. And in order to embrace an evolutionary mindset, I have an acronym that I've created called FOPA. And FOPA basically means future-oriented, present acting. And future-oriented and present acting basically means that you know that instead of obsessing about the future all the time, what's going to happen in the future, what do we know, is AI going to take our jobs, what's the future going to look like, that you can look at the future, but you know that the future scenario you're moving towards depends on the actions that you're taking today. It means that you understand that every decision that you take as a leader, as a citizen, as a consumer, where you vote, where you put your attention, where you invest your money, where you invest your education, that is going to play a big part in the type of future that we are moving towards. And what this means is that being forward thinking and saying, oh, I'm going to be innovative, that's no longer enough. That's not enough anymore. We have to actually go deeper, go further, and ask ourselves, what do we need to do if we want to have technology that's ethical, sustainable, inclusive, and transparent? And if those things are important, if it is important for you to have ethical technology, to have sustainable technology, to have inclusive technology and transparent technology, then you have to start looking for those things today, investing in those things today, using those things today, because if you're not using them today, and if you're not prioritizing ethical technologies today, how can you imagine a future where like one day it is going to be prioritized? We have to start building the future that we want in the present, in every single action that we make. And this means it's really important to look at the value and the role that technology plays. Right? We have been so obsessed with AI and coding and technology and get kids to code and put kids in computer science and computer engineering that we've deprioritized other disciplines like psychology and history and geography and literature and the arts. And that's what we're seeing now is we're creating a generation of people, of young people that are technically brilliant, that they know how to code, but they don't know what to code, or they don't know why they should be coding. And this lack of empathy that we see in the technologies that we're surrounded in, this lack of empathy is a direct result of how we've prioritized technical competency over a human-centric perspective, over an ethical perspective, over a transparent and sustainable perspective. Now, all the decisions that we're making today, what we teach our kids, they're going to determine what technology platforms are going to dominate our society in the future. So ask yourself, are you willing to align your present with your future? Are you willing to say, I'm going to sacrifice some services because I know that these companies, these technologies, these tools are not aligned with how I want to live in the future? Because what I know is that we've already all been changed, right? We've already been disrupted. And this has been a chance. This is a really big opportunity with all these changes and disruptions to say that this is a chance for us to stop and make choices and take the time to think about the technologies that we use and to take the time to see how our choices today are having a direct impact on our tomorrow. And so my last question for you today is, how are you going to evolve? If you're future oriented and present acting, what are you going to do today to ensure a better tomorrow? Because here's what I know, and I'll leave you with this, is that I know that we live in a world where the answers are always changing. So instead of always being so obsessed with the answers, we just have to get good and comfortable at continuously asking the right questions. So ask yourself, Is your technology helping or distracting you? Are you challenging your data assumptions? Does your tech align with your beliefs of what the world should be like? Are you encouraging experimentation and exploration? Are you aligning your present with your future? Are you willing to evolve? If you ask yourself these questions, then I know that you will continue getting the answers that will help lead us towards a much better and brighter future. And I'll leave you with one quote, one of my favorite quotes by the sociologist Eric Hoffer. And Eric Hoffer says, "In a world of change, the learners shall inherit the earth, while the learned shall find themselves perfectly suited, but for a world that no longer exists." Thank you guys so much.
I have so much. We really enjoyed this talk with you, and I really believe that all of us learn a lot, and that we are going to start questioning all of this, like tonight and in like tomorrow and in the future. And I take like 2 takeaways, well, a lot of takeaways, like my note is filled with notes. But I really love this last quote about learning, and I think EGADE Business School always promotes that with our graduates and our alumni, so thank you so much for sharing that. And that innovation requires space and time. For me, it's like, yes, we need to take time aside and really give us that gift to ourselves. So, well, thank you so much, and we will continue with our event here. And bueno, pues muchas gracias. Le agradecemos muchísimo a Rahaf y espero que hayan disfrutado esta charla que nos compartió. Y antes de continuar con el chef Iván Torrejón, tenemos 2 cosas que les queremos compartir. Una, la tradicional foto del grupo, porque a lo mejor no todos nos quedamos a los chilaquiles. Entonces, antes de irnos, por favor, los que no tengan su cámara prendida, los invitamos a que prendan sus cámaras para tomarnos la foto del recuerdo. Y en lo que todos la prenden, le agradecemos también a toda la comunidad de EGADE Business School que hoy nos acompaña, a nuestros directores de sede, Raúl, Daniel, Osmar, Jaime, bueno, Osmar nuestro decano, Jaime, para estar aquí con nosotros compartiendo en estos momentos. Creo que ya vamos a tomar las fotos, ¿sí? Perfecto. Me voy a callar para que podamos sonreír. Y bueno, afortunadamente son muchas pantallas, entonces ustedes sigan sonriendo y por acá me van a decir cuándo ya quedó listo. Bueno, pues muchísimas gracias. Una más. Ah, una más, me dicen que acá una más. No, sigan sonriendo entonces todavía. Yo sonrío como si yo saliera en la foto, pero a mí nunca me ponen en ninguna foto. A ver, ahí está. Una más, ya casi. Listo. Muchísimas gracias a todos por prender su cámara, pues también, oiga, los extrañamos. Y muchas felicidades a Rocío Berenice Carrasco Durán del MBA y a Luis Alán Ceja González, quienes fueron los primeros en identificar a los borregos con cubreboca y van a ser nuestros ganadores de gift cards del Tech Store. Entonces, bueno, nosotros nos vamos a poner en contacto con ustedes y muchísimas felicidades a los dos. Y bueno, ahora sí, un momento que también hemos estado esperando, que pues ya no vamos al TEC, pero los tradicionales chilaquiles son muy apreciados siempre que los tenemos. Entonces los vamos a invitar a esta última actividad de la noche. Y les quiero presentar al chef Iván Torrejón, quien por segunda ocasión, porque fue tan exitoso y tan pedido, por segundo año consecutivo nos va a compartir receta y tips, un poco diferente de la receta, pero de los deliciosos chilaquiles al estilo TEC. Entonces, bueno, Iván Torrejón es un chef emergente, amante de la cocina, explorador de sabores y un apasionado de la gastronomía mexicana y española. Se ha colocado dentro del top 25 de Master Chefs y ha colaborado en comunidades gastronómicas vascas en San Sebastián, España, así como en el Centro Vasco de la Ciudad de México. Como resultado de estas experiencias, ha fundado Trinches Amigos, un emprendimiento de catering en Petit Comité. Iván, muchísimo gusto en saludarte otra vez. ¿Cómo has estado? Bienvenido.
Bueno, mira, qué cosa. Sí.
¿Cuál es tu cuenta de Instagram para etiquetarlo?
Nos encuentran en @trinchesamigos, tanto en Instagram como en Facebook. Y también pueden entrar a la página de trinchesamigos.com, ahí también para ver algunas cosas de las que hacemos. Y ya estoy babeando, chicos. Entonces, bueno, ¿cómo van ustedes?
Provecho, chef. Provecho.
Bueno, pues yo voy a probar.
Gracias. Muchas gracias, chef.
Provecho, excelente.
¡Ah, qué rico!
Provecho
No,
para
qué cosa
todos
tan rica.
ustedes.
No,
Excelente evento.
está
Oigan,
muy
pues,
bueno.
buen
Y pues,
provecho a todos.
Provecho.
Pues
María
bueno,
y equipo,
chicos,
excelente evento. Felicidades.
¿cómo van? Estos
todos.
chilaquiles acompañados pues con su cafecito, si quieren para la hora, con café, o
No, una cervecita, no batallemos.
pues,
Un poquito picosito, pero muy rico.
morita.
Y el morita.
Pues buen provecho a todos, disfruten estos chilaquiles. Y bueno, con esto hemos terminado la sesión que teníamos preparado para ustedes. Antes de terminar y desearles buen provecho a los que van a empezar a comer, a los que ya se acabaron sus chilaquiles también, hubo a lo mejor unos que ya avanzaron un poquito más. Agradecerle mucho a Mariana Ramírez y a Gia Rodríguez, nuestras coordinadoras de relación con egresados en Monterrey y Santa Fe, pues por todo el esfuerzo que le dedican todos los días para que esta comunidad sea tan vibrante y con tantas conexiones. Muchísimas gracias, Mariana, Gia, y muchísimas gracias a todos ustedes. Continuamos celebrando en comunidad. Esperamos pronto poder reunirnos personalmente y disfrutar de una charla, una cata, un networking o otra conferencia en EGADE Business School, que siempre será su casa. Muchísimas gracias, buen provecho y buenas noches.